Movies of 1999.
Hello everyone and welcome to episode 46 of the Movies of 1999, a podcast where we watch a movie from 1999 each week as selected by a bingo machine. My name is Jason Hutchins.
And I'm Craig Talbot.
And in today's episode we are going to be talking about the election. We're not going to be talking about the election. We're going to be talking about the movie Election, which the bingo machine selected last week, and that was paired with a movie called Dick. Now, don't forget to stick around to the end of the episode where we'll be cutting live to this week's movie night for the spinning of the bingo ball, and we'll find out which movie we'll be talking about on next week's show. Now, Craig, don't you think it was interesting that the bingo machine selected Election the week after the election? I mean, how bizarre is that? It gave us Sleepy Hollow for Halloween, and now we got Election for Election.
Yes, well, I mean, the American election, of course, is what we're talking about.
Well, it's not just the American election. It's like that.
Yeah,
it is.
It does kind of feel like a world election. Yeah, it is, isn't it? Yes, very interesting. Yes, and I guess it's fairly. Do you want me to talk about why you picked this particular movie? Or?
Why do you think that would have been on my A list?
Well, it had 92% Rotten Tomato score, I should say.
It's very
79%.
It's in the top 1,000 movies on Internet Movie Database. So, yeah.
It's interesting, isn't it? And 79% like user reviews score.
And I think Obama says it's his favourite political movie as well.
Yeah, apparently Barack Obama does think it's his favourite. Well, according to the guy who wrote the movie anyway and directed it. I don't know if Barack Obama's ever actually said it out loud, but it's probably the kind of thing he would like. He does have a bit of a sense of humour, Barack Obama. So I've seen him on interviews with comedians and stuff, and he does have a bit of a sense of humour. So, which is probably lacking from certain presidents that we won't talk about. Anyway, yes, and yeah, look, I must admit, I looked at it with 2024 eyes. So we'll talk about it a bit more in a second, but yeah.
Well, I think the fact that Matthew Broderick is in there too, and it is kind of a little bit Ferris Bueller-y in a way, because it is set in a high school. But
it is, yeah.
Yeah. And why do you think that was paired with the movie Dick?
Well, I guess they're both political movies in a sense, aren't they? In a very loose sense, they're political
comedies, yes. Yeah. I think that's probably a fair reason for them to be paired. I like the one-word title as well. I mean, there's...
Oh, yeah, fair enough. Yeah. I mean, the Dick one, I think they really went to town on all the ways they could possibly use that word in the movie. Like, the maturity level reminded me of South Park somewhat, but
It also reminded me a little bit of Silicon Valley. I don't know if you ever saw that TV series, but it's basically the whole TV series built up to one joke at the end. And this movie,
well, you know the reason why.
Kind of did as well.
You know the reason why I haven't watched any other TV series, Jason, is because you've got me watching the entire West Wing series from scratch.
That's
so
true.
I don't really have time. And look, to be honest, when you look at the West Wing and you look at these two movies, I said that last night after I watched Dick. I said you couldn't get anything more different to the West Wing.
Well, they do a bit of West Wing action in Dick, because they go into the White House and do their walk and talks and stuff, and it's like, oh, this is quite interesting. It's like a whole alternate reality of the West Wing. Anyway, before we get too deep into that, let's cross over to our mate ChatGPT for its synopsis of the movie Election.
Election is a sharp-witted dark comedy that revolves around the heated student body president race at a suburban high school. Reese Witherspoon delivers a standout performance as Tracy Flick, an ambitious and relentless overachiever determined to win the election unopposed. Matthew Broderick stars as Jim McAllister, a frustrated civics teacher who, resenting Tracy's manipulative tactics, convinces the charming but dim-witted jock Paul Metzler, played by Chris Klein, to run against her. This decision sets off a chain reaction of events marked by moral dilemmas, personal vendettas, and unexpected twists, highlighting the absurdities of both adolescent and adult politics.
And Craig, what did you think of this one?
As I texted you during the week, the initial part of the movie, I think probably the first 15 minutes, made me feel a little bit uncomfortable because of the topic. But
there is a
to be fair to this movie,
isn't there?
Relationship, yeah, which obviously in a 2024 terms is completely unacceptable and would end up in, just completely unacceptable and would not even be considered funny in this day and age. But obviously, once you move past that, and that obviously he gets his lumps, and the movie is quite critical of the particular teacher. So, all right, let's move on from that. Totally. The rest of the movie is actually, sorry.
No, go ahead.
You go ahead. Sorry. I was going to say the rest of the movie does have its funny moments. Yeah.
Yeah, it is quite a funny movie, and it's all about the class elections in a high school. And Reese Witherspoon is like very, set out to become a politician herself, isn't she? I mean, that's how the movie ends.
Yes, yeah. So I think Reese Witherspoon's performance in this movie is excellent.
She's really good.
She's nominated for a Golden Globe for Best Actress in a Comedy or Musical. And the actual movie was nominated for an Academy Award, Best Adapted Screenplay. I think we've already watched the movie that actually won that award. Though, for the life of me, I can't remember which one it was. But might have been Cider House Rules, I think.
Okay, that would make sense.
But, yep. Yeah, so apparently, Jason, you'll be happy to know that in December 2022... it was announced that a film adaptation of the novel's 2022 sequel, Tracy Flick Can't Win, was started being developed for Paramount.
Okay.
And Witherspoon is slated to be Tracy Flick in the movie.
Oh, no way.
But there are some issues. Yeah, there are some issues because Payne doesn't want to do a high school kind of movie with Jim Taylor. So they want to really change the movie and make it a different style. And I think they're still negotiating and arguing about that. So it hasn't actually happened yet, but they reckon it will. But apparently he's overdoing like teen high school movies.
Right. So you mentioned her name, Tracy Flick. The name Flick appears all throughout this movie in block capitals, which makes it look very, very similar to another word because the L and the I.
Yes, it does.
The L and the I kind of almost make a U. But they never make a joke about it. And I'm like, do you think that was deliberate? Like it's written on the cookies, it's on the posters and all this sort of stuff. Yeah. It's like vote Flick.
There is some mention that on some of the cakes that she makes, the L has been extended.
To join
so
up.
They actually do join up and they do spell the word.
Yeah. It must
so
have been
there was
deliberate,
mention
but
of
they
that.
never allude to it. It's like, no one ever mentions it. Yeah.
No. Yeah. I'm a little bit confused about the budget for this movie because there's two wildly different figures for the budget. So the accepted budget seems to be 8.5 million, but there's another source that says it was 25 million. And this matters because the box office was only 17.2 million. So it was either a considerable flop or it just made back its money essentially or doubled its money. So I don't know why there are these two different figures. This happens quite a lot. There are two different websites that cite figures of how much a budget of a movie is, and often they're very different. I don't know whether perhaps the 25 million might be in like modern dollars or something.
Oh, yeah.
Maybe that's why. Yeah, I don't know is the honest answer. I'm telling our audience. If anyone does know, I'm happy to be educated on the subject. But anyway, Roger Ebert gave this film 3.5 out of 4 stars, praising both Witherspoon and Payne. Here's a movie that is simply not about an obnoxious student, but also an imperfect teacher, a lockstep administration, a student body that is mostly just marking time until it can go out into the world and occupy valuable space, which I felt was a little bit harsh, but probably true.
Yeah.
Anyway, as mentioned, Election received a lot of critical acclaim. Metacritic gave it 83 out of 100. We've already mentioned the Rotten Tomatoes score. And it's so based on the Metacritic, they call that universal acclaim. So, as mentioned, apparently it's one of President Barack Obama's favorite films. And it does use a lot of stylized techniques in this movie. You probably noticed the use of the freeze frames, the flashbacks, and a lot of voiceovers.
That was weird. I don't know why they chose to freeze frame Reese Witherspoon in such weird facial expressions. I mean, that was the joke, I guess, that, oh, look, we picked a humorous freeze frame. But I mean, that's something that everyone does if you've got a home video camera or something like that. You know, you have a bit of a laugh because people look silly when you pause it. But why do it in this movie? It's a dumb joke.
Apparently she was really annoyed about it.
Oh, I'm not surprised.
She thought it made it. She thought it made it look really bad, so she wasn't very happy about it.
It was a weird choice that they did that. And I mean, Alexander Payne makes really good movies, so I'm a bit surprised that they chose to do that. The writer of this movie, Tom Perrotta, his name rings a bell, and I realised that he wrote.
Well, he wrote the book. Yeah.
Oh, he wrote the book, but I realised he wrote and created the TV series The Leftovers, which I love. If you want to watch a good show, see The Leftovers. But yeah, that's where I know Tom Perrotta from. So
the actual screenplay was done by Alexander Payne and Jim Taylor, but the book is by Tom Perrotta.
There you go.
Yeah, and he's apparently written a couple of books since this time. Funnily enough, the only two actors that are mentioned as starring in the movie are Matthew Broderick and Reese Witherspoon. Though I thought there were some pretty good performances from some of the other. I thought their principal with the poor suffering. Yeah, they were pretty good. This is a movie by MTV Productions, and I think it's the second one in a row that we've seen.
Yeah.
Pretty sure Varsity Blues was also an MTV production.
And
I believe MTV was
Neil Armstrong planting the American flag on the moon. MTV opening.
I think they were a fairly new production company at this point.
Must have been, yeah.
This was a fairly new thing for them. Yeah. Yeah, so it was distributed by Paramount Pictures. Interestingly, I couldn't watch it on Paramount. I think I ended up watching it on... Did I end up watching it on Netflix or something? I can't remember now. But, I think it was on Disney? Yeah. Anyway, Australia is weird. Yeah, so... It also is an interesting movie because it delivers the points of view from four main characters, Mr. McAllister, from Tracy's point of view, from Paul's point of view, and from Tammy's point of view, Tammy being the rebel girl who ends up at the Catholic school, kind of deliberately. Also, the film was filmed in Omaha because Alexander Payne's from Omaha, and he actually relocated the movie from wherever it was meant to be to Omaha. He actually had trouble getting a high school to agree to doing this because every time they looked at the script, they were like, oh, no, we can't have that because it's got a teacher-student relationship in it.
Yeah, okay.
And they ended up doing it at Papillion La Vista Senior High School in Omaha, Nebraska, which is a real high school. And during filming, adjacent classrooms actually had real classes being conducted. And some of the background noises come from real teachers and students.
That's interesting, yeah.
So
Alexander Payne has something for Omaha because his best-known movie is Nebraska, I think, or his most successful movie. So that's... Yeah,
and another movie that he did just before this.
Sideways as well.
The Ruth or something. Sorry, I forgot the name of it now. I spent most of my time reading about a different movie. But anyway, there's a movie he did just before this, which is quite well known. Forgive me,
Citizen Ruth.
Dear viewers, I can't.
Called Citizen Ruth.
Citizen Ruth, that's the one.
Yeah. But he also did.
And that's also set
about Schmidt and Sideways, and I like Nebraska.
Yeah,
I like his movies.
Apparently, there's a lot of connections between Citizen Ruth and this movie.
Okay.
There are scenes from this movie that are in Citizen Ruth as well. Like the scene where the guys, how he ends up in a supermarket? The teacher, the disgraced teacher.
Yes.
Well, that scene is in Citizen Ruth, and that supermarket is in Citizen Ruth.
Okay.
And he's doing exactly the same thing as the guy in Citizen Ruth does. he's putting price tickets on paint.
Oh, okay.
Apparently.
So there you go.
So that's from the other movie. So there you go.
It's like the Omaha High School supermarket universe. So Matthew Broderick was a bit of a sad sack in this movie, wasn't he? The teacher. Yeah.
A bit
washed out.
Not a great example.
Didn't like to see people succeed or something. I'm not sure what he was doing.
Sort
of lecturing about ethics and morality and the difference between ethics and morality, and ends up having an affair himself.
There's a comment, I think it was from Roger Ebert, that often teachers... One of the things about teaching is you very quickly learn the names of the very, very high achieving students and the really, really naughty students. You learn their names first because they're the ones you get to know first. And sometimes, and I'll have to admit this to be true, the really, really bright student that always puts their hand up could actually turn out to be the really difficult one to deal with.
Right. I
have one of those in my class at the moment. And he's always correcting me, and it's like, it's charming because he's only young, but it's also annoying. Yeah. But yeah, it is a thing. Like, as a teacher, the really, really bright student can be quite difficult to deal with. But
it's almost like
it's
almost like Ferris Bueller became Rooney, the principal from Ferris Bueller's Day Off.
Yes.
And there is
a suggestion that Ferris Bueller, this is how Ferris Bueller ended up.
Right.
He's the exact opposite of what he is in his previous character. Yeah. You know, this is what happens when you stuff around at school and you end up as a teacher and you pay the price for the rest of your life dealing with kids who are like you were.
There's even a scene where he's sprinting down the corridor, the school corridors, which is straight out of Ferris Bueller. And, the principal in that did the same thing. And interesting that when they were counting their votes, there was a bit of election fraud as well. Hey, very topical.
Yeah. And interestingly, the number of votes that they threw out was actually higher than the votes that they counted, because the votes for Tammy, the girl, the lesbian girl, she actually would have won the election if they had counted her votes. Because she was expelled, she didn't win.
Right.
If you look at the piles, the two piles are actually considerably lower than her pile. Yeah,
but she had the best policy, didn't she? Like, everyone got behind her.
Yeah, it's like, just get rid of all of this nonsense.
Elections are stupid. Let's just ditch the whole system.
I don't know if I should admit this, but yes, let's just say that there is some consideration given to the student before when elections like this are held. So I'm not going to say that they're rigged, but they're gently nudged one way or the other if need be.
Bit of insider knowledge.
That has been a thing at pretty much every school that I've been at. Right. You don't want an idiot as head boy or head girl or whatever. So I don't know if I should admit that, but I think that's pretty much a universal truth. There may on occasion be some slight election interference.
No democracy in the classrooms.
There is democracy, but there's democracy. There's a benign...
democracy would be students electing the teachers, let's be honest.
Yeah.
So,
as I say to my students...
Dictatorship, I think.
I'm a benevolent dictator. I often tell my students that, especially my older students. Not my younger students, because they wouldn't get it. But I've often told older kids that I'm a benevolent dictator, and that's just the way it's going to be. And if they want to go and look that up, they can. That's just the way classrooms work.
So the third person running for president is this girl's brother, played by Chris Klein. He's like a jock, but he broke his leg, so therefore he's going to, Matthew Broderick's getting him to run just to sabotage the election.
Yeah.
But didn't he remind you of Keanu Reeves, like his laid back stoner attitude? It's like,
strongly.
Yeah. It's like, this is like, the lost twin brother of Keanu Reeves.
Apparently he was very reluctant to appear in this movie. This was his first movie, and he's actually quite a strong Christian lad from this part of the world, and he didn't actually want to be in the movie initially, but they kind of convinced him to do it.
I read that somewhere.
He
was also in American Pie, and if you're going to choose between doing this movie, An American Pie?
Well, I don't know, but that's what
Right.
That's what I read. I read apparently he was a bit reluctant to play this role, so
Right.
because it was a leading role, whereas I think his role in American Pie was very minor.
Well, in American Pie, he joined the choir to hook up with the girl that was in the choir. The American.
No, he's not that guy. Is
he's
he?
That guy. Yeah.
Is that the same guy?
Yeah, the American Beauty girl.
Okay.
So,
well, I don't know. Maybe
that,
the information
I
read was wrong.
Down election?
Yeah, I could be wrong. We haven't had one of these kind of factoids before, so this is the first urination factoid for the podcast.
Oh, goody.
Is that...
Hang on.
Yeah.
Hang on. Wasn't there a urination factoid in that Kate Winslet movie? Holy smoke.
It could have been.
Holy smoke.
Oh, there was. Yeah, I remember now.
Yeah, it's our second
Anyway, so this is the second one. Here we go. Matthew Broderick actually urinated against the tree in the scene outside Linda's house.
Why?
There you go. That's not the words factoid, you know.
But why would you actually do
anyway.
it? Like you have this.
Well, why not? I guess.
You have all these.
Looked realistic.
All these crew and trucks and lights and the catering tent and hundreds of people, and why would you actually do it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know. Apparently, in the gym scenes, moving on, since the extras were all real high school students, the director actually faced the problem of not having enough of them because it was SAT season, SAT being a very important test in America, so you can get into college. And many of them having already found out the sometimes tedious process of working as an extra, because, it takes a lot of time. As a solution for the shots requiring a full gym to be seen, Payne asked the extras to move 2 or 3 times from their seats to look as if there was more people. Yeah. And the wide shots of the gym were done in less than 20 minutes because the teachers asked more of the students to join in. So there you go.
I've seen that happen in a few movies, I think. 10 Things I Hate About You and stuff like that, where they've done the...
Yeah, that kind of stuff. Yeah. Interestingly, I don't know if we've had a porno factoid, but one of the movies in Jim McAllister's collection is called The Big Election.
Oh, okay.
As opposed to The Big... Anyway.
Well, there is a porno tie-in in the next movie as well, because, of course...
Yes, there is. I was actually going to make a joke about this movie having an erection, not an election. But anyway, moving on.
Well, I'm glad you didn't make that joke.
Of course I would make that joke. That would be entirely inappropriate. But I've done it now, so oh well. There goes my teaching career. Anyway. Apparently Reese Witherspoon originally wanted to play the character of Tammy Metzler. So there you go.
Oh, okay.
She's the girl who ends up at the Catholic school because it has more girls and stuff.
Yes.
And probably the less said about that is the better. Reese Witherspoon's portrayal of Tracy Flick was voted as the 45th greatest movie performance of all time by Premiere magazine. I thought her performance was really good. I don't quite get the 92% for this movie, I have to be honest. But look, it's a good movie. Apparently, Tim Perrotta, a novel Election, is actually a reworking of an earlier 1941 novel called What Makes Sammy Run. Let's say that carefully. Ian Schulberg's novel, an older writer watches a young Sammy Glick rise through the ranks of New York City journalism, etc., etc. So that does seem like a loose thing.
So I found an interesting factoid. So Matthew Broderick and Reese Witherspoon are the 2 top credited actors in this movie. But the third one, on Internet Movie Database at least, is Lauren Nelson, who played the janitor. But he was just the actual janitor at the school where they filmed it. Like, this is his only...
Is that right?
Yeah, this is just his only movie credit. Remember when Matthew Broderick is emptying out the kitchen fridge? And
custodian.
Yeah. Remember when Matthew Broderick is emptying out the kitchen fridge and making a mess, and the janitor passes by and just gives him the evil eye? And then later on, the janitor comes back because he figures out that a couple of votes have been discarded. So it's quite an important plot point. That guy was just the janitor of the school. He when you read about him, It says he continues to work at the school.
Right.
Isn't that funny?
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, in the vein of useless factoids, which I know you love, Jason, this is going to be your favourite of the podcast, I feel. The film is part of the Criterion Collection, Spine number 904, which I see you're rushing to write down right now, just like last week.
No, I've memorised it. Yep, good.
904. Yep, good, 904. Yep.
It'll come in handy one day.
Yep, I know that'll come in handy for you. I'm sure there's someone on our podcast who loves that detail. Yes. Look, they actually wanted to cast one of the Toms for the role of Jim McAllister, being either Tom Hanks or Tom Cruise. I'm not sure either of them would have played the role particularly well.
But Matthew Broderick seems perfect for this movie. And, he wasn't really doing very good movies at the time, because one of the F movies for this year is Inspector Gadget, I think. And he was in that, wasn't he? But, this was really good. This was a comedy movie.
I'm pretty sure Godzilla was around this time as well.
Yeah.
Because I'm pretty sure we've mentioned him in Godzilla. But Godzilla's not a bad movie.
Yeah, it's pretty bad.
Paramount Pictures apparently campaigned very hard for Academy Award nominations for this film. Despite it being a bit of a box office bomb, it was critically acclaimed, obviously. And it did actually get nominated for a Golden Globe for Best Actress, but it only got nominated for Best Adapted Screenplay, which it lost. So, apparently the whole detail of Jim McAllister getting stung in the eye by a bee, which then he leaves him with a swollen eye for the rest of the movie, was a complete fabrication.
Yeah.
So,
it's not in the book, but that was a great visual gag, and it sort of works quite well.
Yeah. It kind of does. It kind of shows his complete fall as a human being. Yeah.
What's funny is I've just finished reading a novel called The Bee Sting. Like, I literally finished reading it last weekend, and then we went and watched this movie, and the guy gets stung on the eye. In the novel, it's about a bride who gets stung on her eye by a bee just prior to the wedding. Right. Yeah. Like, isn't that weird how you get those little moments of serendipity?
Yes. Well, some people might claim that you're juicing the results, but I would not be one of those.
No, the bingo machine.
I mean, I've been at every bingo machine. Well, no, I haven't.
The zeitgeist.
The zeitgeist.
It's like he's read The Bee Sting. It was the election. I know which movie I'm going to throw out.
If you're listening to the podcast, you can now drink at the word zeitgeist, because I think we've got to that point where it's.
Do we have a drinking game? Do we?
Well, we do now. Yeah.
We'll take a sip.
I don't have a drink. Sorry, but. Take a sip of your coffee at this point, please.
There you go.
Yeah, I don't really have a lot more to say about this movie, but you may have more higher opinions than me.
Well, I think, wasn't there also a bit of a fruit thing going on? Oranges and apples and bananas.
Oh, apples. Yes.
So there's a thing where he draws on the blackboard. You don't want to be an apple. You want to be an orange or something. And he just draws two circles, like they look identical. But I can't remember what simile he was going for.
Yeah, he draws four apples, which are all just exactly circles, and then he draws some oranges, and they're exactly the same. And I'm like, and the poor kid's sitting there completely confused, and I'm like, poor kid, because none of them look anything like an apple or an orange.
Yeah, but he's trying to make some.
He's trying to convince him
what you might do in your life or something. I don't know, but he mentions apples and oranges.
Yeah. It's when he's trying to convince him to be in the election, and he goes, do you want to be an apple or an orange? So
then throughout the movie, there's apples. Like, there's so many apples.
Yeah. So apparently apples presage something bad happening. So he won the Apple Teacher of the Award or all that kind of stuff. Yes, I had forgotten about that.
Whereas in The Godfather, it's very famous that oranges precede something bad happening. So maybe it's a mistake of that, apples in this movie.
Yeah, it could be.
Anywho, so... Yes.
Poor old Godfather.
So that's the movie Election. I quite enjoyed it. It was a good movie night movie. Everyone had a bit of a laugh and quite fun to watch.
Was it popular on the movie night?
Yeah. It was really popular and lots of people laughing out loud. And, it doesn't overstay its welcome. So we've had that problem with some movies in the past. Some of them have been really long, but this is a nice comedy.
And you managed the seating okay?
Well, we did have some extra guests at the movie night, but then we also had some people who were off sick. So we had a couple of people who were off sick, so it kind of balanced out in the end. But yeah, it was nice.
Yeah, so
we had a good dinner beforehand and had a bit of a laugh at the movie.
I'm sad I couldn't make it, but work at the moment is a bit insane. So anyway, hopefully in the next couple of weeks things will settle down. Well, they have to because I have to get my things done. Anyway, so that was...
With that said, you can hear the approaching sounds of this week's...
All right, so this week, young people and others listening to our podcast, we have another single-word title movie, this time from Bollywood. I've been looking forward to this one, actually. It's called Sarfarosh. Sarfarosh. And it stars
this is one word,
the legendary...
Sarfarosh.
It is one word, Sarfarosh. It is only one word. It means fervour, I believe. And it stars the great actor Amir Khan, who is probably one of the most famous actors from Bollywood, certainly from Hindi Bollywood movies. Though interestingly, I found out this week, because I didn't know, he's actually a Muslim, which is actually quite interesting, especially in the context of this particular movie. But yes, Amir Khan is an absolute legend, and I went down a bit of a rabbit hole with him, but I'll talk about the movie first. So this movie was directed by John Matthew Matan, and the screenplay is by him and two people whose names I can't pronounce, but I'm going to try, Hriday Lani and Patik Vats. The story was by John Matthew Matan, produced by John Matthew Matan. He actually hasn't directed that many movies, but he's actually really well known. I picked it because it won, and you'll love this award, Jason. It's the 47th National Film Awards, and it won the Best Popular Film Providing Wholesome Entertainment. Only in India, I suspect. It won that award, and it also, there's a thing called the 45th Filmfare Awards, Filmfare being a fairly popular equivalent to Variety or something like that in India, I believe. It won Best Film by critics, Best Screenplay, and it was nominated for Best Director. So that was one of the reasons why I watched it. I actually watched another movie which had Amir Khan in it called Earth, which I spoke about a little bit last week, which is about the whole partition thing, but from the Indian point of view. But that was actually a 1998 movie, and so I ended up not including it because I was unclear about when it was actually released. So anyway, moving on. Sarfarosh is a 1998 Indian Hindi language action thriller film, and it revolves around the story of Ajay Rathod, played by Amir Khan, a dedicated police officer from Mumbai. After his brother is killed and his father is injured by terrorists, Ajay quits his medical studies to join the Indian police service with the aim of eradicating terrorism. And this sort of comes out in the movie as we go along.
This is the wholesome family storyline.
It's 2 hours and 43 minutes, by the way.
Goodness.
So that's 2 hours and 43 minutes you owe me of my life back. But anyway, Ajay's investigation into cross-border terrorism leads him to Rajasthan. No, I'm not going to let you answer that one. When he uncovers a network of arms trafficking supported by Pakistan's ISI. So Pakistan is the bad guy in this particular movie, unsurprisingly. And actually, funnily enough, there was an incident not long after this, which was very, very similar. So this is kind of like a movie presaging real life.
Right.
Again, somewhere along the way. Along the way, he befriends Gulfam Hassan, who is a renowned ghazal singer, which is a kind of poetry which is sung. And that's all I know about it. But anyway, it's apparently very popular, but it's kind of like, it's popular in India and popular in Pakistan, but I think it's like a religious poetry which is sung. And anyway, it's played by Nazaruddin Shah, who harbours a dark secret. And the film explores themes of patriotism, duty, and the personal cost of fighting terrorism. And yes, I did use a co-pilot to summarise the much writing about this particular movie. So just be clear on that one. So critics and audiences praised Sarfarosh for its gripping storyline, its strong performances, and its realistic portrayal of the fight against terrorism. I actually really enjoyed this movie. It was 2 hours and 43 minutes long. So I did what Indian people do, and I had an intermission halfway through. So I actually did go down a little bit of a rabbit hole on this. So it's very, very common in Indian cinema to have intermissions halfway through a movie still, because they like people going and buying snacks during the intermission periods. So unlike in Western cinema where they're trying to push the movies through as quickly as possible, in Indian cinema, some movies even have up to 2 intermissions because they're generally quite long. And so, so it's still a thing in India to have intermissions because they bring in good revenue to the cinemas, and they often put intermissions in Western films as well, even though Western films aren't really designed for intermissions anymore. Intermissions were a thing very, very popular in Western cinema back in the 30s and stuff like that. But I just thought, I went down this rabbit hole because, my whole thing is called the intermission. So there you go. They also do it in the UK with Indian films and in Canada. But in the United States and Canada, they often just do the film straight through without any intermission whatsoever. So I watched it with an intermission because it was 2 hours and 43 minutes long, and I have to go to bed because I have to deal with small children. So
your intermission was going to bed? It's not really an intermission.
Yeah, it was a long intermission. It was a long
You mean you just watched the part of the movie one day and part of the movie the next day? That's not an intermission. An intermission
that's still an intermission. That still counts. Very critical, Jason.
Oh,
I'm glad I have Will at the movie nights to stand up for me because, he often says you're harsh, you're very harsh, so I agree with him. I don't actually know how much this movie cost to make because it's stated in rupees, or at least that's what I think this symbol is, and they use the word 8 crore. I think a crore in Indian terms. No, this is a real thing. In India, they have different words for numbers, and a crore, I think, is either 10 million or 10,000. I honestly don't know. I can't remember, but they do. They have a thing called a lakh, which I think is 10,000, and a crore, which is maybe something like 10 million or something like that. It's probably more likely, but I can't remember, and I didn't have time to look it up. You can look it up if you like. But they do. They have their own words for 10,000 and other numbers. So I don't know what 8 million crore rupees would be. And he took 33.46 crore rupees at the box office.
Well,
so that sounds like quite a bit. It was one of the most successful movies of the year. Okay. And Amir Khan movies are generally very successful anyway. So he's a very, very popular actor. And I did go down a little bit of a rabbit hole with him. He's been in a lot of movies since he was a child. And he's sometimes called Mr. Perfection. He's also sometimes called the Tom Hanks of India, which I think is a little bit unfair because he's actually a really, really talented actor. If he wasn't an Indian actor, honestly, the guy is probably one of the... I've seen him in quite a few movies, and I would really recommend 3 Idiots, which is a movie from 2009, which he's in. And he's a very talented actor anyway. I've seen him a few times in a few movies, and he's very, very good. So this is a very good movie, I think, even though it's 2 hours and 43 minutes long. Well worth watching it. The plot is loosely based on the fact that there's these weapons coming across the desert from Pakistan into Rajasthan, and the guy who is the poet ends up being the bad guy, and there's quite a dramatic ending, as there always is in Indian movies. And yeah, it's actually got a good mix of, there is singing and dancing as well, because it's a Bollywood movie, it has to have a singing and dancing in it. And it's got a stunningly beautiful actress who stars as Amir Khan's love interest, and she's quite incredible. And she doesn't really have to act very hard in this movie because she's basically there for looking stunningly beautiful, which she does a very good job of. But he plays alongside a lot of these very beautiful women. I think they're just there to make him look good, to be honest. And it's a really, really good movie. It's actually a really interesting movie, the plot, and it actually calls back to the partition and all that sort of stuff. So again, issues of the division of Pakistan and India, and also the ongoing battles between Pakistan and India as a result of that history. And this is what this whole movie is. And there's a romantic subplot with this this lady whose name, I should probably give her name, is Sonali Bendre, I think is the right name. And yeah, it's a really good movie, good music. I quite like Bollywood music, so I don't mind a bit of Bollywood dancing. So, there's a bit of that. A little bit different in style to the Pakistan movie that I watched previously. This one was in Hindi, but thankfully the English translation was really good. So I actually understood what was going on most of the time. So there you go. That's Sarfarosh by John Matthew Matan and starring the great Amir Khan.
Well, there you go. This week's intermission. I was almost waiting for the intermission to the intermission in that one, Craig.
I put a lot of work into these intermissions, I'd like to point out, audience. So, anyway, moving on, Jason.
So let's go over now to ChatGPT for its synopsis of Dick.
Dick is a clever political satire that follows the misadventures of two teenage girls, Betsy Jobs and Arlene Lorenzo, portrayed by Kirsten Dunst and Michelle Williams. After a school trip to the White House, they accidentally become embroiled in the Watergate scandal, eventually serving as the infamous informant Deep Throat to reporters Bob Woodward and Carl Bernstein. Much like Election, Dick blends youthful innocence with the complexities of political intrigue, offering a humorous take on serious events through the eyes of its young protagonists.
And Craig, what did you think of Dick?
I actually thought this was really funny.
Yeah.
I laughed out loud quite a lot in this movie, which I don't often do, but I found this genuinely quite funny.
Good.
I mean, there's a lot of Dick jokes, obviously.
I'm glad you enjoyed Dick.
Yeah, I really do like Dick.
I'm going to clip that.
Yeah, I know you are. You're just waiting for the chance, weren't you? Yes. No, look, it was all right. Yeah. Do we have to get Mr. ChatGPT to do its job?
Well, no, I think I already did that. But, the whole Watergate thing was quite funny. And also the West Wing.
Yes.
If you're looking at this movie in the context of having watched the West Wing, seeing these things happening in the White House set is quite funny.
Well, I mean, like the night before I'm literally watching The West Wing, I watched several episodes of The West Wing Season 2, and I walked out of this and said to Simone, yeah, this is very different to The West Wing. That's a big contrast. Look, it's got a semi-serious topic as well, because obviously the Watergate scandal was pretty intense at the time. And writers, and so this was had a budget of $13 million. I think it was filmed in Canada mostly, and the United States. Its box office, though, was only $6.3 million. Again, a really busy year for movies, so might have done better in a different year. Maybe its title put people off, I'm not sure.
Yeah.
There are a great number of movies about this particular topic. I was surprised to learn there is nothing less than, it looks like nearly 20 different movies about this particular topic of Richard Nixon. And a lot of them are administration comedies. So everything from, Hale, Richard, Watergate, Millhouse, White House Madness, The Faking of the President, etc.
Well, there's a whole movie called Nixon, Oliver Stone movie.
Yeah, which is more serious, though.
Dan Hedaya, who plays Nixon in this movie, was in Oliver Stone's Nixon as well. But he didn't play Nixon in that. It was Anthony Hopkins. But I like Dan Hedaya. I really like the movie A Life Less Ordinary, that Danny Boyle movie, and Dan Hedaya's in that. Yep. So that's where I recognised him from.
I actually thought Hedaya did a pretty good job as Nixon really good, in this movie.
And we should point out that
he's been favourably.
Dick is Richard Nixon. He says, "Call me Dick." I mean, but
yes, yeah. And I think he was known as that in real life. Yeah, he's been favourably compared to Anthony Hopkins as Richard Nixon because actually his portrayal is actually pretty good. The two girls apparently objected to the whole naming of the movie and stuff because they were not part of that generation that knew about the Watergate scandal, but it was explained to them.
They also thought that he was overdoing the acting. And it's like, no.
Yes.
That's what Nixon was like.
No. That's what Nixon was like, yes. So because they were born after the whole Nixon era.
I tell you, Kirsten Dunst is such a good comedic actor. She's so funny.
Yeah.
She just has some
and
natural understanding of the timing and everything.
Yeah. I think this is her best movie that we've seen her in this year, to be honest. I feel anyway. And Michelle Williams is very good. If you see Michelle Williams now, she's so different looking to what she was back then, whereas Kirsten Dunst is still quite recognisably Kirsten Dunst. But Michelle Williams is a very different look, and she's a much more serious actor now than she was. Obviously.
I did like Kirsten Dunst in Drop Dead Gorgeous as well. She was good in that.
Yeah, no, she was good in Drop Dead Gorgeous. That's true. Yeah, it was quite well received. It got 72% on Rotten Tomatoes and a 53% user score. I kind of think it's a little bit better than that. One of the shorter movies of the year at 94 minutes, and not too bad for that. I think if it had gone too much longer, probably would have been difficult. Apparently, Cheryl Longan in particular, who was one of the co-writers of the movie with Andrew Fleming, who directed it, was particularly interested in the Watergate scandal, and she had actually had some experience with Nixon, and she had actually thrown ice cubes at Nixon as a child.
She'd thrown ice cubes?
Yep, apparently so. Yeah, apparently so, and it caused a bit of a problem for her because, throwing ice cubes at the president when they were in a hotel. I'm not quite sure exactly of the rest of the details. Anyway, she was quite disgusted by Nixon, as she says it was a lot of her generation, and so she channeled her anger and cynicism into the script, and they were told quite often that their gags went too far. However, they believed that Nixon got off easily, so they fought really hard to keep everything in the movie. They're basically parodying him because they didn't like him.
I tell you what,
and he did.
Like in the next 10 or 20 years, we're going to get a lot of presidential comedies, aren't we?
Oh my goodness, I hope so. I think the whole country needs a comedy because it's not really just the president's fault.
It was good to see Harry Shearer pop up as Gordon Liddy. He does a lot of voices on The Simpsons. He's in Spinal Tap. I thought Henry Kissenger was also quite funny, like the actor that portrayed him. Good. But the one that made me laugh the most was the guy who plays Carl Bernstein, because of course they do the whole Woodward and Bernstein, All the President's Men. Remember that movie with Robert Redford and Dustin Hoffman? This guy is just channeling Dustin Hoffman with his big mane of
massive
black hair.
And
he's played by Bruce McCulloch, who I don't really know, but he must be a Canadian comedian who's, what's he in, Kids in the Hall and stuff like that. Like Drew would know who he is, I think, but he doesn't say very much, but just the way that he handles himself and flicks his hair and stuff.
A lot of physical
Lots
comedy.
Of physical comedy, yeah. It's hilarious. I laugh so much at him.
Yeah, I suspect if I was the real guys who were the actual people who did the story, the two actual reporters, I might not
Woodward
be quite as impressed.
Woodward is still working for the Washington Post. You see him writing about Trump and everything. But but I think they're not making fun of the real guys. They're making fun of Dustin Hoffman in All the President's Men.
Yeah. Oh no, look, I think it's a very funny movie. Apparently, I found this factoid a little bit interesting. Most of the clothes used in the film are authentic polyester clothes from the 1970s. And what I found interesting was they were able to purchase them in brand new condition from a warehouse. So obviously at some point, someone reproduced a lot of those very colourful 70s clothes and they got warehoused and they were able to get them brand new. I thought that was interesting.
And wasn't it funny when Ryan Reynolds popped up because he's
I know
so young.
yes, I did find that really, really interesting.
Like,
because I haven't actually watched a lot of Ryan Reynolds movies, but obviously I've watched him recently in that Wrexham show, which I really like. And you have responded so positively towards.
He must have been like a teenager or something. It's so funny.
Yeah, he was very young in this movie. Co-writer Andrew Fleming said of the film, and of former President Richard Nixon. The Watergate, he actually spoke to the Washington Post about it. Originally, we thought this was an irreverent way to treat something serious, but in reading the transcripts of the tapes, we felt he was irreverent himself. So he violated us and lied to us. He did things that were illegal and seriously, permanently damaged this country. And
remind you of anyone.
So they were really quite... One of their motivations for making this movie was they were amazed there's this effort which has sort of rehabilitated Richard Nixon's reputation subsequently.
Yeah.
Whereas at the time, people were quite disgusted with him. I mean, if you compare Nixon to Trump, Nixon's a hero in comparison. But,
and
anyway.
That's what happens. People get, like, their history gets rewritten to make them look better than what they were. But, of course, the whole point of this movie is that there was an informant who called with the code name Deep Throat, which comes from a porn movie.
Yes.
Which of course, they explain in here because her stoner brother, smokes weed and watches porn. And they get the name from him. But basically these two 15-year-old girls, the informant, they go and, in the parking garage, they go and talk to Woodward and Bernstein.
Do you know what's hilarious about the factoids here, though, is that there's actually a factoid that explains that in real life there were no teenage girls involved in the 1970s Watergate political scandal. I'm not quite sure why IMDb felt...
It's not a factoid. Why would you write that?
I'm merely mentioning it because it actually mentions it on IMDb, and I was like... At the
time this movie was made, Deep Throat's identity was still unknown.
Was unknown.
And Woodward and Bernstein
he wasn't
said
revealed
that
until...
they would never reveal who it was. So, I mean, this was just speculative, like, history or whatever.
Yeah. So apparently he was revealed as Mark Felt in about 2005.
Yes, FBI agent, I think.
March 30. Yeah, he was the number 2 man at the FBI. That's right. So quite high up in the FBI.
But
apparently...
I was just going to say, it is quite funny how they keep on stumbling over things happening with Watergate. Like they witnessed the robbery at the DNC headquarters at the Watergate Hotel. Then they sort of walk into a room because the president employs them as the presidential dog walkers. And they walk into an office and they're shredding papers, and then they find the tape. They record a message on the tape machine and then listen to it back, and they hear all of Nixon's recordings. And it's quite amusing.
Yeah. I mean, there's lots of silly things. So they supposedly single-handedly convinced Nixon to stop the Vietnam War.
Yeah.
And or between them and who's the very famous man who? Sorry, I've forgotten his name.
I mean Henry Kissinger.
Henry Kissinger. That's right. And yes, sorry, my brain went blank for a second there.
Famous man.
An interesting. There's a bunch of things that they're apparently responsible for, and because they suggested to the president.
And it's kind of portrayed in, like we mentioned, Inspector Gadget, who was probably based on Inspector Clouseau, but like that idea that you have this person bumbling around, but somehow solving all the,
the crimes.
So that's basically what they do.
Yeah. So apparently they used analog editing rather than digital editing in this movie because they wanted it to feel like a 1970s movie. So they must have obviously filmed it on film, and they used analog tools instead of the digital ones to maintain that feel. The Marine one, Sikorsky, that they used in the movie was actually the correct model for the one that would have been used in 1974. Yeah. So they went to that level of detail. And, quite a lot of effort was made. I didn't realise Watergate was such a big complex and that people actually lived in it. But, so Terry Garr and the other actor have a line where they say something along the lines of, your peanut butter was in my chocolate and my chocolate was in your peanut butter. And this is actually a reference to Reese's Buttercups, which were actually...
Yeah, it's a very American thing.
Invented
your peanut butter and your chocolate.
Were invented are peanut butter cups. They're much beloved of my wife, and I have to buy them from Amazon every once in a while for her. And, yes, they were actually invented around this time. And there's an apocryphal story that that's how they were invented, completely by accident, by someone combining peanut butter and chocolate. They're actually quite nice, but, they're very American. Yeah, but there you go. I hope I got that story correct because I can't find it right now, but that's from memory. Yes, one of the actors actually retired from acting after this role, Ben Bradley. He played G.D. Spradlin, who I think is one of the... I'd have to look up his actual role. But, yeah, apparently he retired after this. Oh, yeah, he's one of the older actors in the movie. Yeah, so there you go. He was actually in the last Kennedy film called Jack, and he was in the very famous movie The American President, which we know
about. Yes, and did you know that the West Wing Weekly podcast has come back? They've just started publishing new episodes.
Yes, and they talked about the American
They're reviewing
President.
movies. So they've reviewed The American President.
Yes, I haven't listened to that yet because I'm still in season 2. But
yeah. So I think that was after because they finished in 2021 or 2022.
Something like that. Yeah.
And they've reviewed Bullworth, which is another movie that we watched this year. So.
Yes. So I haven't got that far yet because I'm still listening to 2017. They've just got to 2017 in my listening, but you can only listen to so much podcast and watch so many episodes of the West Wing.
I did it all during the pandemic. So, any more factoids, or shall we wrap this one up?
No, I think there actually were official White House dog walkers for Checkers. There were actually people who did that job, apparently. So the name of the official positions to which Betsy Jones and Michelle Williams were appointed were official White House dog walkers for his dog Checkers. Checkers I'm pretty sure is a real thing. I'm pretty sure he did have a dog. But there you go. Yeah, there's lots of silly factoids about this movie. But yeah. I think it's a pretty good. Yeah, I think it's a pretty good movie. It's pretty fun.
These two political comedies were quite good comedies. They're after having watched American Pie, so probably the low point. Both of these movies were quite. I got a few laugh out loud moments, and
yeah. That beach scene with him dancing with Arlene was just I couldn't stop laughing at that. That was hilarious. He just looked Dan Hedaya just looked so happy and that was a moment for me. But
so two quite enjoyable movies this week. And now let's cross over live to this week's movie night for the spinning of the bingo ball, the very empty bingo ball, and we'll find out which two movies we'll be talking about on next week's show. So over to you, future Jason. Okay, well, here we are at the movie night. We've got 7 balls left. Did you want to see the spinning take place? Beautifully mixed. And what number is it? 39. Number 39, which is An Ideal Husband, Oscar Wilde.
To love oneself is the beginning of a lifelong romance.
Yes, my lord. Allow me to introduce my dearest friend, the idlest man in London.
I'm sure you were very badly brought up.
I was.
I wish I had brought you up.
I'm sorry I didn't.
Of all the men in England, Lord Goring is the most determined to stay single.
You are 36, and you must get a wife.
Shh. I only admit to 32.
Until an old flame came into town.
Are you not just a little bit pleased to see me?
Possibly even less than that.
With scandalous news about his best friend, Sir Robert Chiltern, a rising star in Parliament.
Yours is a very nasty scandal, Sir Robert.
Good heavens.
Now, the fun is about to begin.
I'm afraid I should make you a very bad husband.
I don't mind bad husbands. I've had 2.
You were talking quite seriously.
Oh, you must forgive me, Lady Chiltern. It won't occur again.
And the passions are about to ignite.
I shall be in the conservatory under the second palm tree on the right. And then we'll see how you do.
Miramax Home Entertainment presents a comedy about secrets.
Now I'm going to give you some good advice.
One should never give a woman anything she can't wear in the evening.
Scandals.
I hate to stand between a man and his affairs.
Swindles.
My God.
At some point, we all have to pay for what we do. You have to pay now.
And other affairs of the heart.
You stake your liberty.
I accept your wager in all confidence.
You do?
I do.
Isn't it remarkable how those two little words can quicken the heart?
Academy Award nominee Kate Blanchett, Academy Award nominee Minnie Driver, Rupert Everett, Academy Award nominee Julianne Moore, and Jeremy Northam.
Married yet? Must begin in half an hour.
An ideal husband.
And that has been paired with snow falling on cedars.
I know you'll think this is crazy, but all I want to do is hold you. And I think that if you let me do that just for a few seconds, I can walk away and never speak to you again.
There is a love with whom emotion has no limits. There are places in the heart where time stands still.
You smell like cedar.
Who are you?
And there are secrets in the soul.
I knew we could never be right together, and that soon I would have to tell you so.
She's married, Ishmael.
Which control our fate.
Karahaine's dead. It's all over the island.
You've been arrested. Well, you have no answer. You sit there in silence.
This trial is wrong. The whole thing is unfair.
Well, maybe I should write an article about all the unfair things people do to each other.
That's the thing with girls. They grow up and break your heart.
From the international award-winning novel.
You have to let go. That's the way things are.
And the acclaimed director of Shine.
It takes a rare thing, a turning point, to free oneself from any obsession, be it prejudice or hate or even love.
Ethan Hawke, James Cromwell, Yuki Kudo, Sam Shepard, and Max von Sydow.
You have a gentle heart, a good heart.
There you go. 2 more down.
Mm.
The end is in sight,
What
Craig.
will it be?
The end is in sight.
Yes, yes. There you go. Well, we shall see what it is, hey?
So I hope you can make the movie night tomorrow. It should be
Yeah,
fun.
yeah. I've got quite a lot of work on, but I will do my best. I haven't been to one for a couple of weeks, so I probably need to make an appearance. Yes.
But yeah, looking forward to it, whatever it might be. There's a few controversial titles still yet to come up, but I'll just let the bingo machine work its magic because
do its work.
It's been choosing some topical ones. We'll see what it chooses for next week.
Well, next week's show. So there we go. Another one down.
Yeah, and I'll have to see if David and Margaret have done a review of the movie Election. Hopefully they did. If so, the end credits might be a bit different, but I'm pretty sure I'm going to snip a little audio clip of yours and work it in there. Maybe it can just be, maybe I can just put that on loop over the end credits. What do you think? I mean, you said it. You said it. You can't blame me.
Yeah, sure. Just lose me by drop. Why not? I don't care anymore. That's it. Yeah, that's fine.
You did reveal some inner secrets of the school, the staff room secrets, I think, in terms of
that one.
Yeah,
I don't think that's particularly. I don't think there'd be many teachers too shocked at that particular one, but perhaps parents and other people might be surprised. But yeah. Look, things are done sometimes behind the scenes. That's all I'm going to say.
Yeah, that's a whole other gate scandal, isn't it? Teacher gate, or
I suppose it Teacher Kate. I don't think it's taken that seriously. Anyway, there we go.
So let's leave it now to Margaret and David, and for me, it's goodbye.
Goodbye, everyone.
I've been really tired of American prom nights and cutesy teen movies for a while now. So Election came as a very entertaining surprise, despite being set at George Washington Carver High School. This is such a refreshing and subversive take on teen and adult politics. Witherspoon is fiercely wonderful as the purposeful candidate. Election is remorseless in its depiction of these rather pathetic characters, and yet there are fleeting moments when you actually feel sorry for them. David.
The performances are just spot on. Reese Witherspoon is just magnificent as the awful Tracy. She's going to be another Monica Lewinsky or
Hillary Clinton.
Even Matthew Broderick. I mean, he's never been better, I think, in this role.
Well, it's just a very clever satire. I'm giving this 4 stars. What about you?
Me too, 4.
Yeah, I really do like Dick.